for the big broadcast.
We're not professional podcasters.
Say what?
We barely know what we're doing,
It's funny because it's true.
but we have fun anyway.
I'm here to podcast.
Does everybody know what time it is?
We're going streaky! Yeah!
No, we're not. It's time for movies, pop culture, and more with the all-new Culture Cast, starting now. I'm Nick, and welcome to the newest installment of the all-new Culture Cast. Tonight we're going to be doing something a little bit different. As you noticed, I was the only one who introduced myself at the beginning of the episode. The Gorehound and Jen have the night off, and originally I was supposed to be doing an episode with my wife, the Kiwi, but our schedules this past week were kind of crazy, so we didn't have a good time to actually put together an episode. So that's going to be in a future one that we're going to do. So in the interest of getting an episode up for this week, I decided to do something different where I'm actually talking solo about a particular movie and see where that kind of takes us. Hopefully it'll be okay. Hopefully it won't be too boring with just me talking to you. But I don't know, we'll see. It's an experiment and we'll see how well it works, whether or not. So tonight, the topic of our discussion is going to be 2011's Green Lantern film, starring Ryan Reynolds and directed by Martin Campbell. This film is it's a strange movie in that it's not very good. It had all the reasons to be good, but it flopped horribly both with critics and at the box office. We'll go into that a little bit more, I'm sure, later on. But I kind of wanted to talk about this film only because for those of you who follow the blog, this following podcast might seem familiar, as I wrote a extended review of Green Lantern a couple years back. So I'm going to be using that as my basis for this entire episode here. So we'll see how that plays out. So for those of you thinking, oh, you're just cheating by using an old post, you're absolutely right. But for the interest of trying this experiment, of being a solo podcaster doing an episode, we'll see how well it plays off. So let's talk a little bit about Green Lantern. So before I begin, I should say I'm not going to be doing our traditional man crush of the week or what have you been watching, only so much because that's better in a discussion form. So we're going to skip that for this time, and we'll get to the meat and potatoes, as it were, for today. So 2011's Green Lantern film starred Ryan Reynolds. It had a lot of negative response even before the film had opened up. The previous fall, in late 2010, it got bad reviews based on the trailer. It landed not well, effects weren't ready, and it left a big bad taste in people's mouths. That didn't help matters much when they eventually released a new trailer. People already had an idea in their mind, and eventually when the film had come out, no one went to go and see it. The budget was $200 million, and some reports say it went over budget with rewrites and better special effects. The box office only earned $219 million worldwide, and that's not good. It barely passed what it earned, and in typical rule of thumb, for a film to be at least have the break-even point, it would have to make double its budget, and this film did not. I don't know for sure if it had lost money necessarily, but it did not make the money that it needed to be. So any future sequels were immediately canceled, even ones that would have been done at a lower cost. But from all indications, it seemed like the people who were making the film had a lousy time doing it, so their heart probably would not have been in it had they decided to do a sequel to begin with. So, and what I mean by that is there was a lot of conflict between Martin Campbell and star Ryan Reynolds. Campbell wanted Bradley Cooper for the role of Hal Jordan, and that he was adamant about that. But the studio overrid him, however that term goes, and casted. I can't speak tonight. This does not bode well. And cast Ryan Reynolds in the role. Because of that, the two of them clashed continuously on the set. Campbell kept contradicting or critiquing everything Reynolds did. And Reynolds at one point said that he was glad the film had failed because he dreaded having to do it again. And that's really unfortunate because the pedigree behind this film sounds like it should have been successful. You had Martin Campbell, who his filmography kind of goes back and forth. Every good thing he does, there's kind of a lackluster thing. Besides this, he's known for rebooting the James Bond series with Daniel Craig, and before that, kind of brought James Bond into the modern age when he did GoldenEye, Pierce Brosnan's first Bond film. So he's very good at creating universes. In addition to that, he did the Zorro films from the mid 90s, which again, that first film was very, very popular. The second film, not as successful. So it is what it is. But in terms of creating universes, this film, Martin Campbell should have been an easy choice for this, but it didn't quite go together. In addition to that, and kind of more interestingly, two people who were behind the story and behind the screenplay, which is this film's biggest problem, Greg Berlanti and Mark Guggenheim. Mark G. Later on, they would be the brain children behind the whole CW superhero shows from Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, the upcoming Black Lightning, and several other shows in between there, all of which have been hugely popular, great in the ratings, great with critics, fan favorites. So it's interesting that their start here with the superhero genre in multimedia kind of bombed, or kind of did not work as well. Also unfortunate for this film is that the idea was that this movie was supposed to be the start of a DC extended movie universe. A year previously, Marvel came out with Iron Man, or I guess not a year previously, but a couple of years previously, Marvel came out with Iron Man, then the Hulk, then Captain America, and all of that, and that was proving successful. DC wanted in on that, so they were going to make this Green Lantern film, and the idea was that it was eventually going to cross over and lead into a Justice League sort of extended, interconnected film. Evidence for that include that in early drafts of the script, there were Clark Kent references, Superman references. In the actual movie, you see things that reference the Flash and Barry Allen, specifically his town of Central City. So clearly they wanted to, if this film was going to be successful, probably going to be the stepping stones to that. Don't know if the Dark Knight trilogy would have tied into it. Probably not, but I could see money being thrown where eventually it would. But again, all answers to that would have been dashed because it never made it that far. I'm going to go through this movie scene by scene, see if we can look at what exactly went wrong, and just kind of go through this film. We'll break it down bit by bit. So Green Lantern, this movie is bad. Whatever potential it had, it completely squanders it. The truth of the matter, as I kind of inferred from before, it's not just one big thing that destroyed it, but a lot of little smaller things that just added up. The screenplay obviously was a big element of it, but there are a lot of little things within that screenplay that make you wonder what happened. Why did they do this? So I'm going to go through this movie right now through scene by scene to find out what exactly didn't work. Before we begin, as I always preference, if you like this movie and you think it's great, then fantastic. These are just my opinions. I did not like it. And these are going to be my reasons why. I don't think of anyone less who did like this movie. That's just arrogant thinking. I hate that. If like people are, oh, well, you don't like this movie, well, you're dumb. I hate that. So yeah, there we go. There's that disclaimer out of the way. So let's start off with Green Lantern. We start with an opening narration given by Tomar Ray, who's one of the Green Lanterns, and is voiced by Jeffrey Rush. This is my first warning of bad things to come. I'm always leery of movies that try to cram a lot of information in a short opening narration or a scroll. Look at movies like Super Mario Brothers or Judge Dredd, the mid-90s one with Sly Stallone and not the more recent one. I realize they're trying to get the viewer up to speed with the backstory, but it never ever works out. especially since you're forcing the audience to swallow these insane and goofy concepts. Green willpower, yellow fear, it's weird. What does that mean? It's nonsense. It's all laughable at face value. And in a movie where you have space aliens, giant head creatures, evil clouds, you need to ease your audience in with this craziness. In a high concept movie such as this, you first sort of need to ground it and then bring on the crazy. Not helping is all the abstract images and strange looking things that are going on the screen at the same time doesn't help matters much. Look at the Star Wars movies. They get it right. None of the opening crawls waste any time on the history of the Jedi or the Republic. It's just told us what was going on in that particular moment. The rest was filled in as the movie went on. I guess I wouldn't go on so much about this if an hour later, when this stuff kind of actually does matter, the movie repeats almost everything that's established here. Who Parallax is and what the Green Lanterns do and all of that. It's even said by the exact same character. So it's weird to decide to regurgitate all this. So anyway, we start on the Lost Planet in the Lost Sector, even though people clearly know where it's at. We see some hapless aliens release Parallax, our principal villain. He then attacks Green Lantern Auburn Sur, who's played by Temuera Morrison. I don't know his real name. The guy who played Jango Fett in the Star Wars prequels. Sur gets away, but not before he's been gravely injured. We then cut to our hero on Earth, Hal Jordan, played by Ryan Reynolds. And since it's important to show him being an irresponsible douche, we get him trying to wrap a present while driving recklessly on his way to work, which he's already late to. Here's my question. Why is he wrapping this gift right now? We later see he's going to his nephew's birthday party later on. And we later see that he has plenty of time before the party when he's standing around doing nothing. What went through his head while he's driving to work? Hey, I'm late to work. I'm going to no better time than now than to wrap this gift. It makes no sense why he's trying to do it. The movie's trying too hard to make him seem irresponsible. You can show this bit by bit. We're an audience. We'll get it. Trust us. So Ferris Air, where Hal Jordan works, is given a demonstration about some new automatic airplanes that they're trying to sell to the government. Hal and his love interest Carol, played by Blake Lively, are facing off against some new technology to prove the new tech's worth. I think. It's never made clear what the goals and motivations are from the different people involved. Hal and Carol seem as if they need to show up these new unmanned airplanes. The higher-ups at Ferris Air want these unmanned airplanes to win so they can get the lucrative government contract. And Tom, the guy who invented the new planes, seems happy when Hal wins against them. Why does he get this excited over Hal winning, especially in front of the generals who the company hopes will buy the planes? That's like Bill Gates being happy in front of investors when the next version of Windows fails. So as I mentioned, Hal wins against the new planes after a crazy maneuver. But of course, he causes his own plane to go out of control while doing it, and in turn somehow triggers the memory of his father's death. Why is this here? It's totally shoehorned in. Does he get flashbacks like this often when he's flying? Was it because he was in a dangerous situation? If so, why is he allowed to fly? You'd think that would come during some sort of psych evaluation or test, that he has these back issue problems. Anyway, Hal ejects from his plane and the plane crashes. Now, I should say right now, my review comes from the theatrical cut of the movie. I know there's a longer cut on Blu-ray. I've never seen it. I know there's some deleted scenes. I guess one that was put here that gives some backstory. I don't know if it makes the movie better or not. I haven't seen it. I'm going on what the producers, what the director thought. This is what the movie needs to be in the theater. So that's what I'm judging it on. Back to the movie. We then cut to a scene where Hal's being chewed out by his bosses. That he did this risky maneuver and they lost the contract, and I guess people are going to get laid off. While he's doing this, I can't help but wonder why Hal couldn't wait to wrap that gift for his nephew. They're just standing around here doing nothing, and clearly they had enough time where Carol was able to change out of her pilot's gear and into a business suit. So clearly, if this test was successful and Hal didn't botch it and when everything went as planned, he would have had time to wrap this gift. So anyway, we cut to him going to his nephew's birthday party, and he parks on the curb like an a-hole for no reason. I don't know why he parked like this, just to show him that he's still a douche. He's late for the party already. He could have taken another 30 seconds to park the car like a normal human being, but whatever. Anyway, he discovers that his nephew's sad because of Hal's near miss earlier in the day. And they have a genuine heart-to-heart talk that plays really well. Reynolds and the kid have a pretty good chemistry, and the kid isn't all that bad of a child actor. You would think that this relationship will later play off in the movie. But nope, who am I kidding? We never see this kid again. Nothing of value comes out of this conversation except the race car set that Hal notices and kind of plays with very briefly. That comes back later on, and we'll get to that. Anyway, Hal is then abducted and brought to the crashed Aben Sur. He's then given Aben Sur's ring before the alien dies. His buddy Tom comes by to collect him right after the government comes to see the downed alien ship, so they get a near miss. And here's my question. How long has Sur been crashed for? The movie implies it's been a few hours at least. Why did it take the feds this long to mobilize? I would imagine they would have noticed that in the sky, would have gotten there immediately, like every other movie plays out with it comes with an alien crash. The only reason for it is because the script demanded it. They needed Hal to have this moment with his family, have this crash thing, him realizing things kind of suck, for them to grab him and bring him over. But more importantly, is it me or does Hal seem to accept the fact that an alien dies in front of him a bit too easily? Maybe I'm being a bit too nitpicky, but I don't know. I should focus on things like Hal's car, the one he parked like a jerk. It should still be at his brother's house. Wouldn't his family notice that by now he would have... who cares? We're never going to see Hal's family again in this movie anyway, so it's not even important. Or perhaps Hal being abducted by green glowing balls is just a random thing that happens to him frequently, and his family simply accepted it by now. Who knows? Anyway, college professor Hector Hammond, played by Peter Sarsgaard, is recruited to look at the body of Aben Sur, now in the government's custody. We learn he was given this chance to look at the alien because his father is Senator Tim Robbins. I'm sure he has an actual name. I don't know it. I don't care. He's Tim Robbins. The strange thing, and more so than anyone acting completely nonchalant that there's an alien body just laying in front of everyone, is that there doesn't seem to be any other scientists on this project. I know there's Amanda Waller, played by Angela Bassett, who, going off topic for a second, I have a feeling she was going to be another link to an extended DC Comics universe because it's really odd to have a character like Amanda Waller appear in a Green Lantern film. I mean, I guess it works, but I can't help but think that she would have been a Nick Fury type character where she would pop up in all the different superhero films as the shady government scientist. Later on, Amanda Waller would later go on to appear in the TV show Arrow, and more recently in the DC Comics film Suicide Squad. So, there you go. Fun fact. So anyway, I know there's Amanda Waller. In this case, she's a scientist this time around, but that seems to be it. That would be weird that they would not allow or not have other scientists look at this thing. Oh yeah, he also gets infected with the yellow power. Maybe it would have been important for him to have an assistant so that something like this would have been prevented, but whatever. And I have to ask, why was he selected? I know his dad, nepotism, got him looking at this, but does he have a degree in this sort of biology? It seems sort of odd that they would hire a college professor, with all due respect to college professors, to come into this shady government organization to look at an alien body. You think they'd have their own experts already involved in this, but... Anyway, while that's going on, Hal mucks around with the lantern before going out drinking and getting into a fight. As I mentioned earlier, his showboating caused Ferris Air to not get the government contract, prompting a massive layoff. Go figure, his co-workers would be upset with him. So he fights him off with the ring, and he's then taken to the Green Lantern planet Oa. On Oa, we get the exposition dump that was given at the beginning of the movie. So why was that opening narration needed? I don't know. but we got it again. Despite all the narration, the one thing they don't delve into much is the ring itself. And here's my problem with the ring. It's never really explained how it works. We're told that it can create anything that the wearer imagines. But does that mean it takes on the properties of said item? For instance, Hal makes a gun and it fires bullets. Why would it do this? Are those bullets effective since they are not quote-unquote attached to the ring? The same thing with the necklace that Hal will later give Carol. Is there a distance factor to the ring that if it's within 5 feet it still works? Or later on when Hal makes the jets, they work like jets actually would with working engines. How is that possible? I mean, I guess all this is fine, but the movie doesn't explain it. And the ring's functionality is left incredibly hazy. Can he make fictional items? Like, what if he made the USS Enterprise and make it go to warp speed? Can the ring do that? If not, why not? It can make fully functional jets. How does the ring know if an item is real or fictional? I suppose a line of dialogue would have solved this. I guess you can argue you can't make fictional items because the user has to know how the item works, and if it's fictional, like the Enterprise, that's make-believe science, you can't make that. But does Hal know all the ins and outs of working a jet later on in the film? I can't say he does. He's a pilot. I'm sure he knows a bit of engineering, but probably not everything involved. It doesn't make any sense. It almost seems like, remember like when you were a kid and you played make-believe with your friends, and you'd say how you'd have one power, and then your friend would counter that with another power that outdid your power, and then you would come up with one that outdid your friends, and things would just keep escalating with just utter nonsense until someone throws down the infinity card. That's kind of how the ring is presented here. And because of that, it makes the ring seem too powerful that, willpower aside, limits the dramatic effectiveness of it. So, anyway, we learned that the Green Lantern Corps are not faring too well against Parallax. My question is, if Parallax was defeated before by Abin Sur, why not do what he did? Clearly it worked. Wouldn't it be the first course of action? Or did Sur just never write it down? The fact that Sur defeated Parallax is never really referenced again, nor is his method of doing so. Then Hal gets trained, and by trained I mean thrown into the fire and sucker punched constantly. Is this really how they train new recruits, especially ones who just learn of the Green Lantern Corps' existence? It seems very harsh. Kilowig, voiced by Michael Clark Duncan, in a completely throwaway line, which should not have been a throwaway line, mentions how the sun has gravity. Training complete. He also meets Sinestro, and with a name like that, I'm sure he's not evil. And the purple alien takes his anger out on Hal. He's upset that Hal is disrespecting Abin Sur's memory by not being the perfect Green Lantern right away. Wouldn't it make more sense for Sinestro, who revered Sur, would want to take Hal under his wing the way Sur did for him? I mean, I guess that might be just too rational for a movie. And there wouldn't be a movie if he didn't just completely outright reject Hal. I mean, granted, it's misplaced anger, but Sinestro, name's hard to say. Sinestro never acknowledges this, even after he takes a liking to Hal at the end. Wouldn't it make for a more effective... let me back up. I know that Sinestro cannot come to Hal's side right away. I get it. Hal needs to be the hero, needs to learn on his own, and Sinestro being there would be counterproductive to that. I get that. It's a good narrative tool. But wouldn't it be a little bit more narrative sense if Sinestro tries to train Hal the way Abin Sur trained him to honor Sur's memory, but then it's not working for Hal to the point where he gets frustrated with Hal in that you're not learning this, you're an idiot, get away from me, you're fired, so to speak, until he comes to the realization that Hal is different from him and different from Abin Sur, and he needs to do his training a different way so he can be a good Green Lantern. It has a character arc for Sinestro and will provide a slight supplement to Hal's character arc from being irresponsible to responsible. I don't know. I feel that would have been a little bit stronger as a narrative. Hal agrees. Anyway, Hal agrees that he sucks at being a Green Lantern and goes home. And for some reason, he's allowed to keep his ring. Why would he be allowed to keep this ring? That'd be like a cop quitting his job, but the Force allowing him to keep his, issued gun. That's just stupid. Plus, how long was Hal gone for on this planet? A couple of days, maybe? And no one notices him missing. Again, is disappearing for days on end something that Hal does? That people are just common? I mean, doesn't he have a job? Or was he laid off from Ferris Air as well? Or what about his family? Wouldn't his family be missing him? Who knows? Anyway, while this is going on, Hammond, who's back in his classroom, starts hearing people's thoughts and lives out every teacher's fantasy by slapping his student around via telekinesis. And any teacher that claims that they would never think about doing such a thing are clearly lying. Anyway, later on, we're at a big party. And apparently the U.S. military agreed to use the automatic planes that show at the beginning. Even though the military expressed enough disinterest in the project that Ferris Air had to lay off people, we are given a nice hand-wave explanation about why this is happening. However, this plot element is completely worthless, as the military having these planes doesn't have any impact on the story at all, nor do any of the layoffs. I don't know why this is in there. You could have had the story go completely the same by saying, we know Hal showboated, but we're going to do it anyway. And it would not have missed anything. But, whatever. And also, we learned that Hal and Hammond know each other and clearly don't like each other. Why, you may ask? Well, that's never actually established. I guess you can argue that Hammond is jealous of Hal since Hammond's father treats Hal like a son. But we don't know what Hal's problem is with Hammond. They just act cold towards each other, even when Hal tries to subtly champion what Hammond actually does. Then again, Hal's a bit of a jerk, so perhaps that's just Hal being Hal. I don't know. And they just don't like each other for whatever reason. I guess my major problem with this is that we're an hour into the movie, and this is the first time these characters are interacting. And even more problematic is that the movie is trying to shove some sort of backstory between the two. There's only about 40 minutes left of the film, and it comes off as a bit contrived. I feel we need some sort of element of rivalry earlier, and then build on it, so we can have some sort of reason to care when these two eventually, face off and go at it. I guess this is a minor point, but it still bugs me. Maybe they should have put it in the opening narration with everything else, just so we can get it out of the way. And I guess my next question is, why is Hector Hammond even at this party? Other than being the senator's son, which the senator somehow has connection to this as well, there's absolutely no reason for him to be there. And since he doesn't even like his father, even if he got an invite, which logically Hammond probably wouldn't, why would he even come to something that celebrates the senator? Oh, I know, because the plot demanded that he be there. I guess also for him to have a needless bit of him creeping on Carol. So the senator decides to leave the party, and Hammond decides he's had enough of his father by using his new powers to get the senator's helicopter to crash. Of course, no one gets hurt when the helicopter falls to the ground. Then again, who would run from the slowest falling helicopter in the world? This helicopter takes like 5 minutes to actually fall to the ground. Okay, I'm embellishing, but it takes a while. And of course, when it does hit the ground, no one gets shredded into bits from the propeller, even though numerous people are close by for this to actually happen. Hal jumps into action as Green Lantern and saves the helicopter by putting it on a toy racetrack, which explains the earlier scene. I guess using a giant hand to grab it would have been too easy. But then again, maybe I'm just being too critical. I don't know. No, I'm not. I can't believe I am, because this is just, if this was the only problem, I guess this would have been fine, but it's not, and just makes it so much worse. Later on, Hal goes and visits Carol, who immediately recognizes him through the mask. And I'll give credit where credit's due. It's a funny bit. Hal comes and sees her, And in a shocked reaction, Carol kind of shouts out, "I've known you my whole life. I've seen you naked. You don't think I'd recognize you because I can't see your cheekbones?" It's a nice little shade being thrown at the comic book because all Hal wears is like a domino mask, and people logically should recognize him. Anyway, Hammond then, meanwhile that that's going on, Hammond then, tweaks out and gets a big head, literally. And of course the government nabs him. They can't control him, obviously, and then chaos ensues. Fortunately, Hal's ring senses it somehow, and he intervenes. Again, another feature of the ring. How does it know to sense when bad things are going on? And what bad things does it know to actually sense? It makes no sense. Of course, during their fight, you can marvel at the two guys who apparently didn't like each other in real life, just happen to both independently get superpowers. From the same being, too. That's coincidence at its finest. After some fisticuffs, Hector destroys the government compound that he's in, killing his father in the process. Of course, this goes unmentioned the rest of the movie. You think the government would send out some sort of manhunt on either Hammond or the strange green floating guy, since they were sighted at the same location. Then again, this is the same movie where the shadowy government agencies move at a snail's pace. So at least there's some consistency there. In fact, this scene just kind of ends. Hal zaps Hammond across the room. Hammond screams a defeat for some reason, and Hal just sits there catching his breath. And then we cut to the next scene with Hal in his apartment. What happened? Did they escape? How did they escape? How did they get out? I don't know. It just seems like some lazy writing. Like they didn't know how to end the scene, so they just went to the next one. No questions asked. So during this time, Hal learns that Parallax is coming to Earth. And for those of you who actually saw the movie, if you forgot about him, don't worry, I did too. Because the movie seemed to just go on this whole tangent with Hammond. So he learns that Parallax is coming, and he goes back to Oa for some help. However, because the Green Lantern Corps are bigots, they refuse to help, even though it's their very job to stop stuff like this. Hal then goes and asks for permission to do it himself, which they grant. But since he's had the ring this entire time, without anyone caring, it begs the question why he went to Oa in the first place. The scene added nothing. They don't give him any help. They don't give him any tools to fight, just a good luck. And I don't even think they even said good luck, to quote The Simpsons. And honestly, why do they not want to help defend Earth? Not only is it their job, but it gives them a strategic advantage. They know where the bad guy is going to be. Can't they devise some sort of surprise attack? Why are they completely fine with Parallax destroying all life on Earth, especially since destroying such life will make Parallax strong enough to destroy the Green Lantern Corps? This makes absolutely no sense. I don't know. Maybe if the story gave him some sort of reason, like, oh, he'll be too powerful, but that him being too powerful will allow us to give us an advantage, but it doesn't. It makes no sense why they are willing to let Earth die. Anyway, Hal returns to Earth, where Hector has just kidnapped Carol, and reveals that he's turned evil partially because he was jealous of Hal's lifestyle, which is an interesting message. Douchebag equals good, intelligent equals evil. Great job, movie! Hal gets Carol out of trouble just as Parallax arrives and kills Hammond for his failures, thereby making Hammond ultimately pointless in the grand scheme of things. I forgot to mention, Hammond and Parallax somehow teamed up together. I don't know why. I don't know how. Just go with it, I guess. So anyway, Parallax then starts to invade the city and presumably kills thousands of people, inadvertently making this movie much more horrific than the filmmakers probably intended. The problem with all of this is that we never learn what any of the ramifications of this actually are. Wouldn't the government and the world population be going nuts that a giant evil cloud is just vaporizing thousands? We get nothing. The next time we're back on Earth later on in the film, all seems fine. Granted, we'd be opening up a can of worms that if the movie dealt with what came next, but the fact that it isn't even mentioned is just incredibly troubling. And that's a problem I have with a lot of movies. When there's huge disasters and then it's fine the next scene over. That's just so frustrating to me. Hal confronts Parallax and eventually gets it to go off planet. A chase ensues, and because the movie has no sense of how our solar system is arranged, Hal and Parallax make it from Earth to the asteroid belt and then to the sun in under 2 minutes. And yes, I actually timed it. Hal is able to get the cloud to fall into the sun. Thank goodness of Kilowig's completely forgettable line of common knowledge, which wasn't even referenced here. Hal just comes up with this idea under a completely different rationale. Now, as an aside, I'm not saying this wasn't challenging for Hal, but it seemed as if Hal took down Parallax a bit too easily on his own. After all Hal did was literally punch Parallax into the sun. This is something that actually happens. Remember how Parallax was built up earlier in the film by killing off the quote-unquote strongest Lanterns who were acting as a team, all of whom were presumably Green Lanterns for more than a day? And it was also implied how Parallax was much stronger when he faced Hal than he was in that earlier battle. Who knew that punching a cloud was the key to victory? This just seems so incredibly lazy that the whole group of all the Green Lanterns couldn't mount some sort of attack, and Hal just does this so simply. Maybe it could be explained that the Green Lanterns were thinking too hard, or they don't have that sort of quote-unquote primitive mindset that punching something would just work. I mean, that could have been, a good play on how Hal views things differently, so his training from Sinestro needs to be done differently. Again, Sinestro coming to the realization and everything, but it doesn't. It doesn't get played like that. After Hal punches the cloud, Sinestro, Kilowog, and Tomar-Re arrive right after the battle finishes. Good timing, guys. And they bring Hal back to Oa, where Hal becomes essentially Employee of the Month. Also, Kilowog takes credit for training Hal. I don't know what training he did. He just punched him a bunch of times, and you reminded him about gravity. Is that what he's taking credit for? So Hal goes back to Earth, kisses the girl, and goes looking for trouble, and that is the end of Green Lantern. Oh, except for a mid-credit sequence where Sinestro turns yellow for a sequel that will never actually happen. This movie's bad. Not awful. It's watchable, but it's largely forgettable. It's as mediocre can be. The plot is unfocused, the characters are bland, and they rush through some of the more high-concept stuff. The special effects can be cool at times, and I particularly like what they did with the Green Lantern suit. A lot of people were complaining that the suit was a completely CGI creation, but I think it looked okay. I liked how alien it looked, how it was pulsating with green, how they made it skin tight to kind of reflect the comic book, tights sort of look, but it still had a weird sort of vibe to it. I don't know, I liked it. When they make the next Green Lantern film, which is scheduled for 2020, which is not going to be a sequel to this, I hope they bring that idea forward. I honestly think that was a good thought process. But anyway, some of the other visual effects in the film can be dodgy at times. The way this movie was executed reminds me of something from the mid-90s. Sci-fi movies such as Supernova or Event Horizon, which are not really all that good, but have become cult favorites. Granted, it was a different type of movie from... Granted, Green Lantern is a different type of movie from those two, but this film sort of falls into that mold. I don't know how I could describe it. It just feels like something from the 90s. Even the soundtrack sounds like 90s generic. If this was made during that time period, I think people would be kinder to it. However, it was made in 2011 in the midst of a superhero renaissance, and the competition is much stiffer, so the critical eye is much more cynical, and did not help in that movie's favor. The problem, as I mentioned earlier, really lies within the script. The acting's not too bad. Ryan Reynolds is fine as Hal Jordan. I'm not one who thinks he was miscast. He did the best he could with the material given, which is a shame because there are a lot of things you can do in this fictional world. Peter Sarsgaard is clearly having the time of his life, capping it up, and Blake Lively turned out to be a welcome surprise of the bunch. In the end, the filmmakers simply were trying too hard, and they didn't really need to. Green Lanterns are basically space cops. Use that formula. It works, and it's easily accessible to mainstream audiences. Instead, the filmmakers felt like giving us the finger and wanted to confuse the hell out of the audience by shoving so much of the Green Lantern mythos into the film. Well, that's my review of The Green Lantern. Again, if you like this movie, for whatever reason, great. I didn't, and yeah, that's all I can say. However, and I will say this controversial statement, I think that they didn't need to necessarily scrap any sequels. I think there's potential where a sequel could have fixed the problems of this movie, and it's a shame that this Ryan Reynolds couldn't be ported into the extended DC universe that they have now, which started with 2013's Man of Steel. Maybe because it left too much of a sour taste in people's mouths why they're not doing that. But I don't know. I think they could have still made it work. Maybe not do a sequel, but use him for a Justice League film. But who knows? The extended, interconnected cinematic universe of the DC Comics, that those plans seem to be changing constantly. So who knows what they'll be doing? I guess this could have been worse in the late 90s, early 2000s. They wanted this movie to be a comedy starring Jack Black as Hal Jordan. Could you imagine the disaster that would have been? I mean, I like Jack Black. I don't know if it would have worked, or maybe it just would have been so crazy that it would have worked. I don't know. So, okay, well, the one regular feature that I will do tonight is trivia.
It's trivia time.
So my trivia tonight, it's not going to be in the form of a question because I have no one here to ask. So I'll just tell you a fun fact. Jeff Johns, who was a producer on this movie and a writer of the Green Lantern comics and a heavy hitter at DC Comics altogether, he originally tried to get this film produced in the year 2000. But the first thing that was asked by the producers or by the studio when they were trying to get this movie made was that could they do the film without having the Green Lantern ring? For those of you who know Green Lantern, him wearing the ring is sort of like the centerpiece of the film. It's what gives him his powers. So this question discouraged him from pursuing this further so badly that he didn't try to make another attempt until after The Dark Knight was released in 2008. So it's kind of interesting that film studios try to make a movie about Green Lantern without his signature weapon. So anyway, that is tonight's episode about Green Lantern. I hope you stayed through this entire episode. I know it's only me talking. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. If you want to see things like this in the future where it's just me or the Gorehound or Jen or anyone else kind of spout off about their own particular thing for an episode length without anyone else talking, let us know at the comments. Send us an email about it. If you never want to hear anything like this again, this is a bit of an experiment tonight, let us know that as well so we can make sure we don't do this again. So for myself, I'm Nick. Thanks for listening. This has been the All New Culture Cast, and we'll see you again next week. You've been listening to the All New Culture Cast, one of Chicagoland's finest podcasts.
You're making me fall asleep to death.
Well, I guess there's not much we can do about that. In the meantime, check out our blog at znculturecast.wordpress.com. Send us an email at nick.culturecast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your feedback, comments, and requests. Follow us on social media. Theme music by bensound.com. This has been a Saltwater production, copyright 2017. Thanks for listening. It's almost like the guy saying, awesome, the new thing I worked tirelessly for has completely failed to test. It's like he's saying, awesome, the thing I worked tirelessly on. He's like saying, awesome, the thing I worked tirelessly. He's like saying, awesome, the thing I worked so tirelessly on has failed. So, fuck it.